I was born with a lethal allergy to men. According to my mother, any physical contact with a male would trigger a violent anaphylactic shock. My throat would close, my skin would erupt in hives, and my heart would simply stop. The doctors called it a rare, heterogeneous protein hypersensitivity. There was no cure. To keep me alive, my mother divorced my father when I was a toddler and forced my sister Riley, who is 2 years younger than me, to attend all-girls schools alongside me. For 20 years, the three of us lived in a sterilized world, a fortress without men. When Riley was 7, she missed our father so much that she sneaked out to see him for an hour. When Mom found out, she went into a manic frenzy. She dragged Riley into the bathroom and doused her in industrial disinfectant from head to toe. Then she took a steel wool scrub pad and scoured Riley's hands until the skin was raw and weeping blood. "You selfish little brat. Is a man really worth more than your sister's life?" Mom screamed, her voice cracking. "Quinn could die at any second, and you're out there indulging yourself? I'm telling you now, as long as your sister is alive, you're never to touch a man. Not ever." Riley shook with pain, but she didn't cry. She just stared at me. In that look, there was a cold, sharp resentment that made me wish I had died right then and there. So, on the eve of Riley's 18th birthday, I decided to give her back a normal life. I decided to end it. I went to a dive bar downtown and found a stranger. But as the sun began to rise, the expected death didn't come. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, my skin pale but clear, my breath steady. If I wasn't dying, then what had the last 20 years been for? I walked into that bar with the cold resolve of a ghost. I had spent my life as a burden, a fragile glass doll that everyone had to tiptoe around. I was done. I chose a stranger. I sat close to him, our shoulders brushing. I leaned in to speak over the music, feeling the heat radiating from his skin. I even let my hand linger against his arm. I had one singular, desperate thought. Let it end tonight. I didn't want to be the weight around Riley's neck anymore. I wanted her to have a father, a boyfriend, a home that didn't smell like bleach and fear. I closed my eyes and waited for the suffocation to begin. 1 minute, 10 minutes, an hour. The entire night passed. My skin remained smooth. My lungs drew in the stale, smoky air without effort. No hives, no swelling, no shock. Not even a hint of a dizzy spell or an itch. None of the symptoms Mom had used to terrify me since I was old enough to speak ever appeared. Standing in the harsh fluorescent light of the bathroom, I felt a different kind of chill. I had spent the night in close proximity to a man. I had done the one thing that was supposed to kill me 10 times over. Why was I still breathing? Had I been cured by some miracle? Or was I already so far gone that I couldn't feel the symptoms? Or the most terrifying thought of all, had I never been sick in the first place? I suppressed the rising panic and glanced at the man sleeping on the bed. I grabbed my coat and bolted out the door, heart hammering against my ribs, and ran all the way home. The moment I stepped through the door, the air turned cold. Mom was standing in the living room, her face a mask of fury, clutching Riley's phone. The screen showed a string of hidden messages between Riley and our father. "Who gave you permission to contact him?" Mom's voice was like a serrated blade. "You went to see him again, didn't you?" "Mom, it's my 18th birthday," Riley whispered, her voice trembling with a decade's worth of suppressed tears. "Dad just wanted to give me a gift." Mom lunged forward and grabbed me by the arm, pulling me in front of her like a shield. "Your sister has a severe protein hypersensitivity. It's not just about touching," Mom shrieked. "Even the scent of a man, the microscopic dander in the air, it can kill her instantly. And you're out there rubbing shoulders with men and bringing that filth back into this house? Do you want to kill her? Is that it?" Riley's eyes turned bloodshot. She bit her lips so hard it bled, her gaze fixed on me with a mixture of agony and pure, unadulterated hate. Mom turned and brought 2 bowls of brownish liquid from the kitchen. The bitter, pungent scent hit me, making my stomach roll. This was the suppressant I had been forced to drink every day for 20 years. "Drink it," Mom commanded, sliding a bowl toward Riley. "Flush the contamination out of your system." I won't. Riley finally snapped. It's my birthday and you're making me drink this poison again?
I'm not sick.
I'm fine. Mom's face hardened. Her words were calculated, meant to draw blood. Oh, is your birthday special? Your sister is 2 years older than you, and she's drunk this every day for 2 decades without a single complaint. What makes you so special? She leaned in closer. You don't have to drink it, but don't expect a cent for your tuition or your life. Your sister's health is a gold mine of medical bills. If she gets sick because of you, there won't be anything left for you anyway. Seeing Riley go pale, Mom softened her tone to a sickening sweet coo. Be a good girl. Drink it, and I'll buy you that MacBook you've been wanting. Consider it my gift to you. Riley hesitated, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She closed her eyes, tipped her head back, and choked the bitter liquid down. Mom turned to me then, her face radiant, with a gentle, terrifying smile. She stroked my hair. Quinn, honey, Riley is just young and reckless. I have to be firm with her, or you're the one who pays the price. I'd do anything to keep you safe. She pressed the other bowl to my lips. Drink up. This is a special batch. It'll protect you from the world. You know you're the one I love most, right? In the past, I would have been moved to tears of guilt and gratitude. But now, the phantom sensation of the stranger's skin from the bar was still fresh. I was breathing perfectly. I wasn't in shock. I wasn't sick. The wall of lies I had lived behind for 20 years didn't just crack it pulverized. If I wasn't allergic, why had she invented this phantom? Plague? Why had she torn our family apart? Why had she groomed Riley to hate the very sight of me? I looked at the bitter sludge in the bowl. For the first time in my life, I didn't open my mouth. One thought echoed in my mind. She's not protecting me, she's using me. Don't just stare at it. Drink it before it gets cold. Mom urged, her voice gaining that familiar, non-negotiable edge. I clenched my fists, bearing my suspicion. Deep 17 years of obedience was a hard habit to break. I bowed my head, held my breath, and drained the bowl. As I set the bowl down, Mom's eyes suddenly sharpened. She lunged toward Riley, her gaze fixed on Riley's neck. There was a faint, nearly invisible red mark there. What is this? Mom's voice dropped to a deadly chill. Riley flinched. I just scratched myself. Scratched yourself. Mom laughed, a sharp, toxic sound. In an all-girls school? You've been out whoring yourself out to some boy, haven't you? You disgusting, cheap little girl. She grabbed Riley and shoved her toward me. Look at what you're doing. You're bringing filth into this house. You're trying to murder your sister. Come on. We're going to the school right now. Mom screamed, dragging Riley toward the door. I want to know exactly which stray touched you. I'm going to make sure the whole world knows what kind of girl you are. She gripped my hand tightly as she hauled Riley out. Her voice broke into a sob. Don't be scared, Quinn. I won't let anyone hurt you. I'll protect you with my life. The entire way to the school, Mom played the martyr. She wept to the neighbors, told anyone who would listen how ungrateful Riley was, how she was endangering her fragile sister. People looked at us with pity. They whispered about how hard it must be for a single mother with a special child. Mom soaked up the sympathy, her head held high in her staged misery. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't about me.
It was never about me.
In the principal's office, Mom turned on the waterworks for the staff. My oldest daughter is so cursed, one touch from a man and she's gone. I sent them to this school to save her life, and now Riley is bringing dirt home from the hallways. She's trying to kill us all. The teachers offered tissues. The parents in the hallway nodded in solemn agreement. Being a mother is so hard. That poor sister, how could the younger one be so heartless? Everyone took Mom's side. She stood in the center of the room, a tragic, noble figure, bathed in the warmth of collective pity. Riley stood in the corner, her face a mask of white marble. The hatred in her eyes when she looked at me was so thick, I could almost taste it. The school, wanting to avoid a scandal, did a cursory investigation and decided Riley had an inappropriate relationship with a boy off campus. They suspended her and sent her home to reflect. The moment we stepped back into our house, the dam broke. Riley lunged at me, shoving me hard. I stumbled back, my spine hitting the wall with a dull thud. "This is all because of you," she screamed, her voice cracked and raw. "Because of you, I can't see my father. I can't have a life. You ruined everything." Every ounce of her repressed rage poured out onto me. Before I could even catch my breath, Mom was there stepping between us. She slapped Riley across the face. "You've lost your mind. How dare you lay a finger on your sister?"
Get to the balcony. Now.
"You stay out there until you apologize. No dinner, no bedroom. If you touch her again, you're out of this house for good." Riley was sobbing now, a sound of pure agony. Mom pushed her onto the balcony and locked the sliding glass door. Then, she turned to me and began stroking my back, her voice a soothing hum. "It's okay, Quinn. Mommy's here. No one will hurt you." She raised her voice, making sure Riley could hear through the glass. "It's her own fault. She needs to learn. Your life is worth more than 10 of hers. If she ever stresses you into an attack, she couldn't pay for the damage in a lifetime." Riley stared at me through the glass, her eyes glowing, with a feral, murderous red. She looked like she wanted to tear me apart. From that day on, Riley's cruelty intensified. Whenever Mom was out, Riley treated me like a servant. She made me do the laundry, scrub the floors, and clean the grease off the stove. If I was too slow, she'd shove me or call me a monster. One afternoon, she forced me into the basement storage room to organize decades of old boxes and textbooks. As I moved a heavy crate from the bottom of a stack, a yellowed medical envelope fell out. Driven by a sudden, frantic curiosity, I opened it. Inside were 3 physical exam reports. My fingers shook as I read the first one. Name: Quinn Vincent. Female. All vitals normal. No known allergies. My brain went numb. I didn't have the disease? Then what was the medicine for? What was the isolation for? I thought maybe Riley was the sick one? Maybe Mom got the names mixed up? I pulled the second report. Name: Riley Vincent. Female, all vitals normal, no known allergies. I felt a cold sweat break across my skin. I wasn't sick, Riley wasn't sick. Then why? Why tear the family apart? Why exile our father? Why keep us in a cage? I opened the third document, and the truth hit me like a physical blow. It was all right there, stripped of the lies. Mom wasn't protecting me. She wasn't playing favorites with Riley. Mom was the one who was sick. She was the one who couldn't stand men, who couldn't bear the presence of any male energy. But she couldn't admit she was broken. So she pinned her insanity on me. Every bit of guilt I'd carried, every ounce of Riley's hatred, our father's exile, it was all a grand delusional play directed by our mother. The paper rattled in my shaking hands. "Quinn, what are you doing in there?" Mom's voice drifted down from the doorway. I panicked, shoving the reports back into the box. When I looked up, I forced my face into the mask of the submissive daughter she expected. "Nothing, Mom. Riley just wanted me to finish the storage room." Mom watched me for a long beat, her eyes searching. "Finally," she sighed. "Riley is getting out of hand. I'm sorry I haven't raised her better. But don't blame her too much, honey. She's had to sacrifice a lot for you staying home, not seeing her father. She's bitter." I clenched my hands at my sides. Even now, she was using me as the excuse. She was still stoking the fire between me and my sister to keep her secret safe. But she didn't know I knew. Just then, there was a heavy knock at the front door. When the door opened, it was my father standing there. I hadn't seen him in over a decade. His hair was graying at the temples, and he looked thinner, more tired. Mom's face turned the color of ash. She looked like she'd seen a demon. She lunged forward, shielding Riley and me, her voice hitting a glass-shattering register. "Who let you in? Get out. You're going to kill Quinn." She whipped around, grabbing Riley's arms so hard she left marks. "Was it you? Did you call him? I told you never to let him near this house." Riley was shaking, her eyes wide with fear.
"No."
"Mom, I didn't. I swear I didn't tell him to come." My father's brow furrowed, his voice raspy and exhausted. I wanted to see my daughters. It's Riley's birthday. I brought a gift. See them?" Mom hissed, her voice trembling with mania. She's deathly allergic to men. You're trying to kill your own daughter. Riley looked at our father, the man she had dreamed of for years, and her face contorted. The weight of 15 years of misery finally broke her. She turned on me, screaming with a visceral, jagged pain. I hate you. I wish you were dead. Because of you, he can't come home. Because of you, I have nothing. Why won't you just die? Neighbors began to poke their heads out, whispering, "Poor woman, dealing with that sick girl and a husband who doesn't understand. That girl is such a burden." The collective pity flowed toward Mom again. She was the hero. I was the anchor dragging the ship down. I decided then that I was done being the anchor. In front of the stunned crowd, I took a step forward. Then another. Mom's face twisted in horror. "Quinn, stop. What are you doing?" I shoved her hand away. I walked straight to my father. I reached out and wrapped my arms around him, pulling him into a tight, desperate hug. The smell of his cologne, the rough texture of his jacket, it was the first time I had felt the world in 20 years. I buried my face in his chest, waiting. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. I felt fine. I felt safe. Riley froze, her jaw dropping. Mom looked like she was about to faint, her eyes darting around in a panic. I slowly let go of my father and turned to face her. "Mom," I said, my voice steady. "For the first time in my life, you said I'd die if I touched a man. Why am I still breathing?" She turned to bolt inside, but I was faster. I grabbed her arm. Before she could scream, I yanked her toward my father and pushed her. She stumbled, crashing right into his arms. Mom shrieked as if she'd been branded with a hot iron. She scrambled away from him, her whole body shaking uncontrollably. Her face went through a kaleidoscope of pale white and sickly green.
"Quinn."
"How could you?" she gasped, clutching her chest. "I've spent my life protecting you. I gave up everything to keep him away from you. How can you be so cruel?" She tried to play the martyr again, backing into the corner. Then, realizing I hadn't dropped dead, she tried to pivot. A fake bright smile stretched across her face. "Wait. Quinn, you're okay? It's a miracle. Your allergy must be gone." She clapped her hands, her voice loud and performative. "The doctors were wrong. Oh, thank God. My baby is healed." She rushed to me, trying to pull me into a hug to block me from my father. "Okay, everyone, the show's over. My daughter is better. We're going to celebrate as a family." She waved her hand dismissively at my father. "You show ID. Go now, David. Quinn is fine, but we need our space." She was touching me, holding me, but she wouldn't look at him. She couldn't. Riley finally snapped out of her trance. She looked at Mom, then at Dad, then at me. She stepped forward and grabbed Dad's sleeve, refusing to let go. "Mom, if Quinn is fine, why can't Dad come in?" Mom stiffened. She immediately went back to her script of the long-suffering wife. "How dare you ask that? Do you have any idea what I've been through? Raising 2 girls alone? While he was off living his life." She pointed a finger at Dad, tears streaming down her face. "Did he send money? Did he help with the bills?"
"No."
"And now that you're well, he wants to waltz back in?" Over my dead body. The neighbors started nodding again.
"She's right."
Where was he all those years? Dad went pale, his mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. He looked broken. "That's not true," Riley screamed. "You wouldn't let him come back. You blocked his number. You told him you'd call the police. How dare you talk back to me?" Mom roared. "I did everything for you." She turned to me, her voice dripping with fake honey. "Quinn, honey, don't let this upset you. Go inside. I'll handle this." She thought I was still that timid, broken girl. She had no idea the medical reports were in my back pocket. I looked at her, at the woman who was so terrified of men that she'd built a prison out of her own children, and I spoke the words that ended her reign. "I'm not the one who can't touch men, Mom. You are." The color drained from her face instantly. She looked like she'd been struck by lightning. "What? What are you talking about? I gave birth to you. How could I be allergic to men?" She tried to laugh, but it came out as a strangled sob. I've suffered for 20 years because of your illness. Stop it, I said, my voice trembling with 2 decades of suppressed rage. I found the records in the basement, Mom. The ones from the clinic. I pulled the 3 reports out and threw them at her feet. Look at them. Riley and I are perfectly healthy. We never had an allergy. We were never dying. The person with the problem is you. You have severe psychological trauma. You can't stand the sight of a man, but you were too proud or too scared to admit you were crazy, so you made me the monster instead. You destroyed Dad's life, Riley's childhood, and my entire existence just so you wouldn't have to face your own head. Mom collapsed to her knees, shaking her head frantically. No, no. You're lying. Where did you get those? You're trying to ruin me. She lunged for the papers, but I stepped back. But it's more than just a phobia, isn't it? I looked down at her. You've worked so hard to hide the truth because if people knew why you were like this, they'd know the truth about me. The silence in the room was suffocating. I'm not Dad's daughter, Amel. The world seemed to stop. Dad froze. Riley's hand dropped from his arm. You're terrified of men because you were assaulted, I said, the words heavy and bitter. It happened right after you and Dad got married. You couldn't face it. You couldn't tell him. And when I was born, I was the living proof of the worst night of your life. Mom let out a scream that didn't sound human. She covered her ears, rocking back and forth. Stop it, stop it. Don't say it. I will say it, I whispered, kneeling down to her level. You hated me from the moment I was born because I look like him, don't I? Not Dad.
Him.
You couldn't kill me, so you
Caged me.
You called me sick because it was easier than calling me a reminder. You made everyone hate me so you wouldn't have to feel guilty for hating me yourself. The neighbors were silent now, their pity replaced by a horrified realization. Dad sat down on the steps, burying his face in his hands. The pieces of the last 20 years were finally fitting together in the most painful way possible. You didn't protect us, I said, my voice cracking. You were a coward. You dragged us all into your private hell because you didn't have the courage to get help. It was you, Mom shrieked, suddenly snapping. She lunged at me, clawing at my face. You ruined my life. If you hadn't been born, I would have been happy. You're the reason I'm like this. Riley stepped in then, shoving Mom back. So it was all a lie? I hated my sister for 15 years. I treated her like garbage because of your lie? Mom just sobbed on the floor. The mask of the Great Mother shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. In the aftermath, the truth didn't set us free immediately, it just gave us a place to start. Mom was diagnosed with severe, untreated PTSD and a dissociative disorder. Dad didn't leave her despite everything. He was the one who drove her to her therapy sessions every day. He took over the house, working to bridge the 20-year gap he'd missed. Riley was a ghost for a long time.
She wouldn't look at me.
Then one night, she came into my room. I'm sorry, Quinn, she whispered, her eyes red. I was brainwashed, but I still chose to be mean to you. I don't know if we can ever be normal sisters. We've never been normal, I told her. But we can try being real. I moved out a few months later. I needed air. I needed to see men and women and the world without wondering if I was going to stop breathing. 6 months into her treatment, Mom came to see me at my new apartment. She looked different, smaller, humbler. She didn't look like a martyr anymore. She just looked like a woman who had been through a war. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, her voice barely audible. The doctor asked me what I was most afraid of. I realized it wasn't men. It was the fact that I let that night define every second of your life. I turned my wound into your cage. I looked at her for a long time. I thought about the bleach and the steel wool and the bitter medicine. I don't hate you for what happened to you, I said softly. I hate that you made me your scar instead of your daughter. Mom nodded, tears splashing onto her lap. I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to see you for who you really are. Life is quiet now. Mom still struggles, but she's learning to exist in a world that includes men. Riley and I are rebuilding one awkward dinner at a time. Dad is the anchor we all actually needed. A few weeks ago, I brought a guy I've been seeing home for dinner. Mom looked at him, took a deep breath, and shook his hand. Her hand shook, but she didn't pull away. She looked at me later that night and whispered, "Thank you, Quinn, for not giving up on me when I gave up on you." I just smiled and clinked my glass against hers. The darkness is over. We were all wounded, all broken, and all lost in a lie. But finally the air is clear. And for the first time in 20 years, I can finally breathe. The end.